What if I told you that in less than 10 days, one decision could completely rewrite the future of your finances and hardly anyone's talking about it? The Hedera ETF deadline is approaching, and insiders believe it could trigger the biggest wealth shift since Bitcoin's first halving. But here's the catch: if it doesn't pass, the fallout could shake the entire altcoin market. So the real question is, are you prepared for what happens next? If you're interested in this topic, hit the like button, subscribe, and type "interested" in the comments, and I will give you a heart. Let's be real, most of us are tired of watching the markets rise and fall like a roller coaster built by blind engineers, tired of hearing next bull run soon while bills stack up and savings shrink. And yet, here we are again, staring at another headline that could flip the script for millions: the Hedera ETF decision. Now, I get it, crypto fatigue is real. You've seen hype before, and you've been burned before. You might even be thinking, so what? Another ETF, another overhyped event. But this one's different. Because this isn't just about price action, it's about validation. Institutional validation. The kind that separates experimental projects from the real financial infrastructure of tomorrow. See, Hedera isn't just another coin hoping for a lucky pump. It's a network built for corporations, governments, and global systems. The kind of clients that don't chase hype, they build legacies. And on November 12th, the US SEC will make a final decision on Grayscale's Hedera ETF. A move that could either unleash a flood of institutional capital or shut the door for months, maybe years. Let's zoom out for a second. When Bitcoin's first ETF was approved, Wall Street laughed. Then they bought in. When Ethereum's ETF passed, retail called it overpriced. Now they regret not entering earlier. Hedera stands next in line, and if this approval hits, it won't just be another chart spike. It'll be a statement. Hedera has arrived. Here's what's wild. Canary Capital's HBAR ETF already passed. That alone made history. But Grayscale? That's a whole different monster. We're talking billions in managed assets and connections that reach into the deepest corners of traditional finance. If Canary opened the door, Grayscale is about to kick it off its hinges. And yet, that same opportunity carries risk. Because let's be honest, if the SEC denies it, fear will ripple across the altcoin markets, volatility will spike, and people who don't understand long-term cycles will panic sell, turning temporary fear into permanent loss. That's why right now, this is the most important time to understand positioning. Smart investors, the quiet ones, not the ones yelling on X they're already loading up or setting limit orders below key psychological levels. They're studying on-chain flows, tracking wallet movements, watching how institutions are reacting to Grayscale's filings. They know that whether the ETF passes or not, the narrative around Hedera has already shifted. Because here's something most people miss. Even the application of an ETF means legitimacy. You don't apply for a product like that unless your compliance and structure are already ironclad. That's why Hedera was chosen before XRP, before Cardano, before Solana. It's not a fluke, it's the reward for years of regulatory precision and enterprise alignment. And that's what makes this moment so defining. You're not just betting on a token, you're betting on infrastructure, on the rails of tomorrow's finance, on a network that banks, governments, and Fortune 500 companies are quietly testing behind closed doors. Now imagine, for a second, what happens if the SEC says yes. Billions in capital from pension funds, institutions, and hedge funds could be directed straight into HBAR exposure. That's not speculation, that's how ETF pipelines work. So while most retail investors scroll past this news, shrugging it off as just another crypto story, the real players are moving. Because they know this kind of setup only appears once or twice in a decade. And if you've ever said, man, if only I'd bought Bitcoin before the ETF, this might just be your second chance. Let's cut through the noise. This isn't just about crypto charts and market caps, it's about survival. Because for millions of people across America right now, their savings are bleeding in slow motion. Grocery bills are up, rent's up, gas is unpredictable, and the so-called safe assets like 401ks and bonds are barely crawling. And here comes Hedera quietly positioning itself as the one bridge between traditional finance and the decentralized future. Now here's the question that matters most. Where will you stand when this bridge is complete? Because when this ETF decision drops, there will be only two kinds of people, those who prepared and those who panicked. Those who understood that the institutions aren't waiting for retail confidence, they're building infrastructure while retail argues on Reddit. Think about it. When the Bitcoin ETF passed, 90% of retail investors didn't even know what an ETF was. They waited until it was too late. And those who did know, they didn't just make profit, they built wealth, legacy wealth. the kind that turns financial stress into freedom. That's exactly why we created this community, because no one wins this game alone anymore. This is not 2017, where luck made millionaires overnight. This is 2025, where information, strategy, and community decide who wins and who watches from the sidelines. If you're listening right now, understand this. Markets move faster than emotions. By the time the headlines catch up, the opportunities are gone. That's why I'm telling you, don't wait for the news. Be ahead of it. Position yourself like the insiders do. Join our movement, because in this community, we track what matters before the market reacts. We've already seen signs. Institutions quietly accumulating, whales shifting liquidity, dormant wallets reawakening. That's not noise, that's choreography. The ETF approval could be the spark, but the real explosion comes when retail FOMO collides with Wall Street exposure. So here's your psychological wake-up call. If you've ever said, "I just want a second chance," this might be it. Because once Hedera joins Bitcoin and Ethereum as ETF approved, it won't be just another altcoin, it'll be the third pillar of a regulated digital economy. Let that sink in for a second. Bitcoin built the foundation. Ethereum opened the doors. Hedera's about to bring the banks inside. This is what the next financial cycle looks like: tokenized real estate, programmable money, AI-powered trading, and a blockchain layer that doesn't burn the planet just to process a transaction. And when the capital floodgates open, you'll either be part of the flow or watching it from the sidelines, wondering why you didn't move when you had the chance. But here's the truth that no influencer will tell you: fear is the biggest wealth transfer mechanism in history. When weak hands sell, the patient accumulate. When panic spreads, quiet money buys. So, I'll ask you this. Are you ready to think like the institutions do? Because in our community, we don't chase candles, we position before the spotlight hits. Hit the button below. Join the discussion. Connect with people who see what's really happening. Because if you don't have a circle that talks about future systems, you'll end up surrounded by people who only talk about past prices. This is not about hype. This is about timing. You can sit back, hope, and scroll. Or you can move smart, act early, and become part of the story when Hedera makes history on November 12th. And when that green light flashes across the news, you'll remember this moment, the moment you decided not to wait. Here's where the story takes a sharp turn and you need to pay close attention. Because in the coming days, the crypto world is heading for a collision between fear and opportunity, and Hedera sits right in the middle of it. November 12 isn't just another date, it's a financial fork in the road. If the SEC gives the green light, Hedera becomes the third ever cryptocurrency in history to secure a U.S. spot ETF right behind Bitcoin and Ethereum. That means institutional investors, pension funds, and even retirement portfolios can legally hold exposure to HBAR. Imagine that for a second. Wall Street money, trillions deep, finally touching Hedera. Now, let's play both sides for a moment. If the ETF gets approved, everything changes overnight. Liquidity surges. Retail investors who once ignored HBAR rush in too late. Price volatility spikes, but so does recognition. Suddenly, every crypto analyst and YouTube guru who laughed at Hedera will start asking, how did we miss this? The network that was called a sleeping giant will finally wake up. But if the ETF gets denied, here's the twist that's not the end. It's the setup. Because even in rejection, Hedera's momentum doesn't stop. Remember, Canary Capital already has an HBAR ETF trading live. That means institutional infrastructure already exists. A no from the SEC doesn't erase adoption, it delays it. And in those quiet delays, the smart money builds its position while fear dominates the headlines. So the real question isn't will it pass, it's will you be prepared either way? Because here's the thing, every cycle needs a storm before the sunrise. Bitcoin had Mt. Gox, Ethereum had the DAO hack. Hedera's storm might just be this ETF decision. But every storm clears the path for clarity, and clarity invites capital. If you've been in crypto long enough, you already know the pattern. The news scares the crowd, the market bleeds red, and the whales collect discounted gold. This is where conviction pays. When others panic, you position. Look around, the signs are already there. Institutional developers are integrating Hedera's hashgraph into enterprise-grade applications. Big banks and global logistics companies are quietly running pilots on it. And now, with ETFs on the table, Hedera is no longer just a blockchain. It's becoming the financial backbone of digital trust. So if you're watching this, wondering what to do next, don't just watch. Participate. Comment, "I'm ready," if you're holding through the volatility. Because this is the kind of story we'll look back on years from now, when HBAR's price is no longer in cents but in dollars, and people start asking, who believed before the approval? Think long-term, hedge short-term fear. Keep your eyes on the fundamentals: energy efficiency, security, predictability, and institutional readiness. These are not hype words, they're survival codes for the next financial era. So when that SEC decision hits the headlines and chaos takes over your feed, remember this moment, the calm before the storm. Because whether the ETF is approved or delayed, Hedera has already made history. The question now is, will you be a spectator, or will you be part of the next financial revolution? Because once this door opens, and it will, there's no going back.